If you'd told me a month ago that I'd end up in a mountain cabin with my best friend Liam, no cell service, one bed, and one hell of a secret, I probably would have laughed and said, sounds like a terrible adult video setup. But here I am, living it. Let me back up. Liam and I met in our sophomore year of college. He was loud, charming, athletic. I was quieter, sarcastic, and more comfortable behind a laptop than in a gym. Somehow, we clicked. I wouldn't call us opposites exactly, but where I overthink everything, Liam just goes. He's the kind of guy who decides at 3 a.m. that we should drive to the beach, or who buys concert tickets without checking if you're free that night. And the thing is, I never mind. Even when I should. This trip? Classic Liam idea. You're burning out, he told me, dropping a heavy hand on my shoulder one night after work. You need to unplug. Like a phone? Like a human being, he said. Come with me this weekend, cabin in the mountains. Just us, no pressure. That last part stuck with me. No pressure. It was the kind of phrase people said before asking you to do something you absolutely should not do. But I agreed. I always did with him. We left Friday afternoon. The drive was scenic. Endless stretches of pine, winding roads that dipped through valleys, Liam blasting his road trip playlist, full of chaotic genre switches and bad jokes. The cabin was nicer than I expected. Rustic but not run down, perched above a lake that shimmered like glass in the late sun. Inside was all wood beams and stone fireplace, with just enough room for two people to get along or get on each other's nerves. Only one bed? I asked, raising an eyebrow the moment we stepped inside. Liam shrugged, tossing his duffel bag onto the couch. It's big. We've shared worse. He wasn't wrong, but still. I thought you said it had 2 bedrooms. I said it had a bedroom, he corrected, flashing that grin that always made it hard to argue with him. Come on, it'll be fine. It's not like I snore. You do. I barely snore, he said, kicking off his boots. You exaggerate. I let it go. Because he was already moving on, exploring the cabin like a kid in a new playground. And because a small, reckless part of me didn't entirely hate the idea of sharing a bed with Liam, even if he didn't know that. Especially because he didn't know that. The first night was easy. We made pasta, opened a bottle of wine, played cards. Liam beat me in every game, bragged relentlessly, and then fell asleep mid-sentence while we were both watching something on his laptop. The second night was different. That afternoon, we'd gone hiking, an actual real hike, not a city kid's version of, let's walk through a park and call it nature. I was exhausted, sweaty, and starving by the time we got back. But it felt good, like I'd done something real. We took quick showers, one after the other, and ended up on the porch just after sunset, drinks in hand, the mountains silhouetted against a fading sky. The air was cool. Quiet. Peaceful. Then Liam asked the question that changed everything. You ever think about how different things would have been if we'd met somewhere else? I turned to him. He was leaning back in a camp chair, legs stretched out, glass balanced on his knee. Like, where? I don't know, not school, somewhere random, a bar, or like, on a trip like this. I sipped my drink, trying to ignore the way my chest tightened. What difference would it make? He looked over at me then, and his expression wasn't teasing for once. It was thoughtful, maybe a little vulnerable. I don't know, he said. Maybe if we didn't have all the history, it'd be easier to say certain things. Something heavy settled in the silence between us. I cleared my throat. You've never had a problem saying anything. That's not true. Really? I shot him a look. You've told me about every dumb date and embarrassing story since college. He smiled faintly. Yeah, well, not everything's dumb or embarrassing. The air between us changed. Suddenly, I was hyper-aware of how close he was sitting. The way his hoodie slid off one shoulder. The way he was looking at me now. Not like a friend, not like he was joking, but like he was seeing something he hadn't before. I tried to laugh it off. So say it then. Whatever it is. Liam was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, "You ever wonder what it'd be like? What would be like?" He looked away, took a breath. "If we were more." I froze. Not because I hadn't thought it. I had. Too many times. At parties. On late-night drives. On nights, he'd fall asleep next to me on the couch, and I'd lie awake wondering what it would be like to turn toward him. Touch him. Kiss him. But I never thought he did. And now here he was, looking nervous and sincere and real in a way that made my heart ache. "No pressure," he added quickly, like a reflex. I kissed him. I didn't think. I just moved. And when I pulled back, his eyes were wide. But he didn't pull away. He didn't laugh or freak out. He leaned in again. And just like that, everything changed. The kiss wasn't supposed to be the turning point. At least, not for me. I've kissed guys before, sure. At parties, under the influence, in the spirit of casual experimentation. But this was different. This wasn't a blur of alcohol and regret. It wasn't some dare or drunken whim. This was Liam. And when our lips met again, it wasn't hurried, rushed, or just about wanting. It was everything. At least, that's what it felt like in that moment. His hand cupped my jaw gently, like he wasn't sure whether this was a mistake or a revelation. But whatever it was, the world outside the cabin, dark, cold, untouched by this sudden heat, disappeared. There was only us. There was only the soft press of his lips against mine, and the way the tension between us seemed to snap like a taut wire, suddenly loosened. My heart was pounding. My thoughts were spinning. This was Liam, my best friend, the guy I'd trusted for years, the guy who could make me laugh until my stomach hurt, who never hesitated to make my problems feel small, who had always been the one constant in my life, no matter where I was or who I was with. But now, things felt different. When we finally broke apart, we both took a breath, as if the air itself had thickened. Liam didn't pull away immediately. His forehead rested against mine, and for a moment, we were silent. Just two guys who had no idea where the hell we were or what we were doing. The world seemed to have shrunk, the only real thing between us, the quiet hum of the night around us and the rise and fall of our chests. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice rough. "I didn't. You don't have to apologize." I cut him off, my voice sounding shakier than I intended. My fingers still tingled where they'd brushed against his skin. "You didn't do anything wrong," but I wasn't sure what he had done. What we'd done. Liam exhaled, his breath warm against my cheek. "I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't think it'd happen now or like this." He laughed, though it sounded hollow. "Maybe I'm just stupid for thinking you'd feel the same way." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. I didn't even know how to start. Because everything he said, it hit too close to the truth. And I hated how easy it was for him to make it sound like nothing. Like it was just some casual thing that would blow over. Except it wasn't. "I do," I said before I could stop myself. Liam turned his head slightly, pulling back just enough to meet my gaze. His eyes were wide, searching mine, like he was trying to decipher what I meant. "What? I do feel the same way," I repeated, a little stronger this time. "I don't know what this is, but I feel it. I felt it for a long time." Liam let out a shaky breath, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I couldn't tell if it was relief or confusion in his eyes. Maybe both. "You're serious?" He whispered the question like it was fragile, like he was afraid if he spoke too loud it would shatter everything. "About us?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, Liam. I've been hiding it for too long, pretending like it didn't matter. But it does." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Instead, we just looked at each other, the weight of the admission hanging between us. The silence felt thicker now, like it wasn't just the night air wrapping around us, but the realization of how much we had both been holding back. Finally, Liam chuckled, though it didn't sound entirely light. "I've been an idiot. I was the idiot." I shot back, feeling a hint of a smile tug at my lips. I didn't say anything either. "I guess we both need to stop being idiots then." I nodded. It was strange, though, saying it out loud. I had thought about it so many times, but to have it out there, exposed, hanging between us like that, it made my heart race in a way that was more terrifying than thrilling. I mean, we were still best friends, right? Sure, things were about to change, but we were still us. We still had to be us, didn't we? Liam stood up slowly, and I followed his lead, standing next to him, unsure of what to do next. He wiped a hand over his face, then reached for my wrist gently. "You want to go inside?" he asked softly, voice low. His touch felt reassuring, grounding, but there was still a question there. Maybe the biggest question. Where do we go from here? "Yeah," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let's go inside." We walked into the cabin together, side by side, but it didn't feel the same. Nothing felt the same. We weren't just two friends anymore. Not after that kiss, not after everything that had been said. We were different. We had to be. But the question lingered in the back of my mind. What did it mean for us? Was this a one-time thing? Was it just the result of a weekend away? Some pressure-free escape that had turned into something more? Or was this the start of something real? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. Inside, the cabin was quiet, the only light coming from the fire crackling in the hearth. The warmth of it was comforting, but I could still feel the tension hanging in the air, thick between us. Liam didn't move away when we stood in front of the couch. He just looked at me, his eyes steady, as if waiting for me to make the next move. I didn't want to overthink it. I didn't want to ruin it by second-guessing everything. So I reached out, touched his arm, and pulled him closer. He didn't hesitate. Instead, he leaned in, and just like that, we were kissing again. This time more urgent, more desperate, like we both needed it. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me closer, and I could feel the heat of his body against mine. My head was spinning, but it didn't matter. None of it did. All that mattered was him. The way he felt, the way he kissed, the way everything about this moment, this weekend, felt like it was something we couldn't walk away from. He pulled back slightly, breathless, and we looked at each other. "Are we sure about this?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper, a slight tremble in it. "I'm sure," I said, without a doubt. "I don't know what this is yet, but I know I want to find out with you." And with that, everything changed. The night stretched long after that first kiss. We didn't sleep in the traditional sense. Not really. Instead, we sat by the fire, shoulders touching, occasionally letting our hands brush against each other. Every time it happened, a spark ran straight up my arm, making me want to pull him closer and never let go. But we didn't rush. We didn't force anything. That was the thing about this trip. No pressure. And yet, every silence, every glance, every accidental touch was loaded with tension that neither of us had admitted until now. At some point, I realized we were both half drunk on wine and half drunk on adrenaline. His laughter, the way he leaned forward to reach for the blanket, the casual brush of his fingers against mine, it all felt electric. My chest ached in that delicious, twisting way it always did when Liam was around, and now there was no pretending it was just friendship. "God, this feels weird," he whispered almost apologetically as he nudged my shoulder with his own. His green eyes were wide in the firelight, glinting with both mischief and something else, something I had only ever dreamed of seeing there. I smiled, heart hammering. "Weird good or weird bad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He laughed softly, a sound that made my chest tighten. "Definitely weird good, but dangerous weird, like we're treading somewhere we're not supposed to." I didn't answer immediately. Because he was right. We weren't supposed to be here. Not like this. We'd been friends for years, had shared secrets and late-night heart-to-hearts, but nothing like this. Nothing that made me want to forget boundaries, to forget rules, to forget everything except the way his hand felt brushing mine, or how close he smelled, or how safe yet exposed I felt beside him. And yet, I didn't pull away. Instead, I leaned slightly toward him, feeling the warmth of his body seep into mine. His hand found mine again, fingers intertwining lightly, hesitantly, as if he were testing whether I wanted this as badly as he did. I did. The hours passed with a slow, torturous ease. We talked, laughed, and occasionally kissed, our lips meeting and separating in a rhythm that felt natural yet explosive. Every time our teeth collided, or our tongues brushed, my stomach flipped, and I felt dizzy with longing. I realized then that every moment we'd spent together before, the movie nights, the late-night drives, the inside jokes that no one else would understand, had been leading to this. Every glance, every brush of our hands, every word we'd ever exchanged was now charged with something heavier, something real. Finally, exhaustion crept in. Our shoulders pressed together on the couch. We stayed in a comfortable silence, the fire casting shadows across the room. Liam's head found my shoulder, heavy and warm, and I instinctively leaned my cheek against his hair. His breathing slowed, deep and steady, and I realized I could lie like this forever. Not because it was convenient, but because it felt right. It felt like the world outside, jobs, obligations, and the mess of life had faded into irrelevance. Out here, with him, there was only the moment, only the heat between us, only the fragile, tentative hope that we could explore this without ruining what we already had. And then, in the half-light, in that quiet suspended time between consciousness and sleep, Liam whispered my name. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't demanding. Just soft, just searching. "I'm here," I murmured. "I don't want this weekend to end," he admitted, voice barely audible. "I don't want to go back to this city and pretend this, whatever this is, didn't happen." I swallowed. I had thought about it too. The idea of returning to our daily routines, him bartending nights, me staring at my laptop, the constant background hum of our separate lives, was unbearable now. Not because we'd done something wrong, but because we hadn't done enough. Not yet. "I don't either," I said, letting my fingers trace his hand gently. "We don't have to pretend. Not ever. If we don't want to." He shifted slightly to face me, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "So, we do this?" His question hung between us. A question simple on the surface, complicated in its implications. "Do we risk everything for this? For us?" I nodded. "Yeah, we do this." And that's when everything truly changed. Not because we kissed, or held hands, or whispered things we'd hidden for years, but because we both realized, simultaneously, that this was more than a weekend fling. It wasn't just a break from life. It was a beginning. Something new, something terrifying and exhilarating and inevitable. We stayed awake most of the night after that, entwined on the couch, talking about everything and nothing, exploring the boundaries of what was suddenly possible. We laughed until our sides ached, argued playfully about trivial things, and occasionally stopped just to kiss again, softer this time, slower, savoring the weight of it. And for the first time in a long time, I understood what Liam meant by no pressure. Because with him, there was no expectation, no rush, no judgment. Just two people, finally acknowledging the truth that had been there all along. We weren't just best friends anymore. We were so much more than that. The sun crept over the mountains the next morning, slipping through the thin curtains of the cabin and painting the room in soft amber light. I blinked into the warmth, still half dazed from the night before. Liam was beside me, his arm draped over my waist, his body pressed against mine. His breathing was steady, deep, but there was a softness to him that felt different, even in sleep. As if last night, as if we had altered something inside both of us. I had expected some kind of awkward distance when I woke up. A shift back to the usual boundaries we'd always had. I'm not sure if we're supposed to talk about that. Silence, the casualness that masked the truth. Instead, Liam's grip on me tightened as he shifted, a soft murmur leaving his lips. "You awake?" "Yeah," I whispered, even though I wasn't sure I was ready to be fully awake just yet, not with this much uncertainty and warmth still clinging to the space between us. "How did you sleep?" He smiled into the pillow, his lips brushing against my neck in a way that shouldn't have felt as intimate as it did. Like a rock, but I think I might be dreaming this, I chuckled, still half lost in the daze of sleep. Same. Liam's hand slid down my arm, his fingers grazing lightly against my skin, sending an involuntary shiver through me. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes, his gaze warm and a little hesitant. So, this isn't just a fluke, right? I felt a wave of warmth flood my chest. Relief, understanding, desire, all mixed together in a knot of emotions I couldn't untangle yet, but didn't need to. No, it's not a fluke, I said softly, almost as if I were reassuring myself as much as him. It's real, and I think we should talk about it. Like, really talk. He nodded, a small sigh escaping him as he pushed himself up to lean back against the headboard, keeping his hand on mine. I think we've been dancing around this for a while. That hit me harder than I expected. We have, haven't we? Yeah. I mean, I've known for a while. I just didn't know if you. I've known too, I interrupted, my voice a little more firm than I meant. I wasn't sure what came over me, but I couldn't leave it hanging. I've known for a long time. I just didn't know how to say it. Liam let out a breath, rubbing his eyes as if trying to shake off the haze of the conversation. I mean, it's crazy, right? We've been friends for years. And suddenly it's like, he searched for the words. Suddenly it feels like it's everything. Like the rest of what we've been doing doesn't matter anymore. I could feel the weight of it all. The uncertainty, the vulnerability, the fragile hope. I don't know if we can go back to just friends, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I want to. The silence stretched between us, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. In fact, it felt like a breath held in anticipation, both of us waiting for the other to confirm what we were already feeling. It was terrifying, but it was also something I couldn't ignore. So, what do we do now? Liam asked, his voice quieter. He looked at me, waiting for me to make the next move, to answer the question that hovered between us. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I could feel the warmth of his hand still on mine, and I didn't want to pull away. I didn't want to ever pull away, but at the same time, I didn't want to rush into anything either. This was big. This was huge. We were still us, but we were different now, and that scared the hell out of me. We take it slow, I said finally, my voice more confident than I felt. We don't force anything, but we don't hide either. Liam smiled, a slow, easy smile that I could feel all the way to my bones. I can do slow, he said softly. I've never been good at taking things slow, but for this, I'll try. For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just sat there, taking it in, letting the weight of the words settle into place. I felt like we had crossed some invisible line, and there was no going back from it. But part of me wanted that. I wanted to explore this. I wanted to see where we could go together. It wasn't the type of moment I'd ever imagined with Liam. We had always been friends, best friends, nothing more, nothing less. But now we were something new, something different. And I wasn't sure where it would take us. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to find out. Finally, Liam spoke again, his voice lighter now, teasing. You know, I'm glad we're having this heart-to-heart and all, but I'm also starving. You want to make breakfast? I laughed, the tension finally easing from my chest. You're impossible, I said, but there was no heat in my voice. I was relieved, maybe even a little grateful. He had a way of making everything seem less intimidating, and for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this could be easy. Hey, he said, turning to look at me with a serious expression that didn't match the teasing in his voice. Are you sure? I mean, I know he said no pressure, but I just want to make sure this is what you want. I don't want to screw it up. I felt my heart stutter. Liam, of all people, was asking me if I was sure. It was such a Liam thing to do. Casual, yet full of sincerity when you least expected it. I'm sure, I said, my voice steady. I want this. I want you. His smile returned, warmer, more genuine. Then let's make breakfast. We both stood up, stretching, and for the first time in hours, I felt my muscles ease, the tension draining from me. Everything felt lighter now, like a weight had been lifted. Whatever this was, whatever we were starting, it felt like it was the right thing. The next few hours were spent making pancakes, arguing about the best way to cook eggs, and laughing in that easy, natural way we always had. It felt like nothing had changed, but everything had. Liam's hand brushed mine occasionally, and each time, it felt like a silent acknowledgement of what we both knew was happening. The air was still charged with something unspoken, but it was no longer terrifying. It was just part of us now. We ate breakfast on the porch, the view of the lake stretching out before us, and for the first time I felt content. There was no pressure, there were no expectations, just us, and that was enough for now. The afternoon passed in a slow, luxurious haze. We explored the woods behind the cabin, following a narrow trail that wound through pines and ferns, sunlight speckling the forest floor. Liam was effortlessly confident as he led the way, while I stumbled over roots and rocks, laughing every time he offered me a hand. Every touch, every brush of our fingers, every guiding grip on my elbow felt electric. I couldn't tell if it was the novelty of being close or the anticipation of what last night had started, but my chest tightened every time our hands met. We reached a clearing where the sunlight hit the ground in golden patches. Liam collapsed against a fallen tree, stretching out and letting the warmth of the sun hit his face. This is perfect, he said, eyes half closed, hair messy and sun-kissed. Why do we never do this? I crouched beside him, trying to catch my breath after tripping over another root. We're always too busy, or too scared, I admitted, though the words felt strange leaving my mouth. They had weight now, meaning something I hadn't expected. He turned his head to look at me, those sharp green eyes glinting in the sun. Too scared of what? Of whatever this is, I said, gesturing vaguely between us. My stomach flipped. You and me, last night. Liam sat up a little, letting the sunlight catch the lines of his face. Yeah, he said softly. That was different. Different good? I asked, heart racing. He smiled, slow and knowing. Different, amazing, he said, and then he laughed, shaking his head. God, I don't even know what we're doing. I shrugged, trying to act casual, though every word he spoke made my pulse hammer harder. We're figuring it out, I said, though even I wasn't sure if I was right. The walk back to the cabin was quiet, but the kind of quiet that isn't uncomfortable. It's the silence that happens when two people are entirely aware of each other and don't need to fill the space with words. Every time our shoulders brushed, I felt that familiar spark, the one that had haunted me for years without me admitting it to anyone, not even myself. And now, it was out in the open. There was no hiding it, and I didn't want to. Back at the cabin, we collapsed onto the couch, sweaty and sunburned, a bottle of water in Liam's hand, and another in mine. The fire from last night had burned down to embers, leaving the room warm but not stifling. I couldn't stop stealing glances at him, noticing the way his t-shirt clung to his shoulders, how his hair had dried in unruly waves, how his lips curved when he laughed at something small and insignificant. Do you ever think about what happens after this weekend? I asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. My fingers twitched as I reached for my water bottle, avoiding eye contact. Liam froze for a second, looking down at his hands, then back up at me. Honestly? He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. Yeah, I think about it, but I don't want to ruin this. What we have? Not even in a day or a week, you know? I nodded slowly, understanding exactly what he meant. I get it, I said softly. I don't want to either, but I don't want to ignore it either. He gave a small laugh, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe I'd said that. You're impossible, he said, and I could hear the affection under his teasing. Then his tone softened. But I think I like impossible. My stomach fluttered, and for a moment, all I could do was stare at him. There it was. The truth. out loud. He liked me. He liked me as much as I liked him. And hearing it said, even casually, made my heart surge with a thrill that had nothing to do with reason. Yeah, I said finally, my voice low. I like impossible too. And then, without another word, he leaned in. Not hurried, not nervous, just deliberate. His lips met mine again, slow and soft, lingering, testing. The heat between us didn't need words. Every brush of his hand against mine, every gentle press of his body closer to mine, spoke volumes. We kissed until the sun dipped lower, until the light in the room turned gold, and then red, and then the faint blue of evening. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested together, breath mingling, hearts racing in sync. I think we're gonna need a lot more, no pressure, weekends, Liam murmured, a smirk tugging at his lips despite the warmth in his voice. I laughed softly, but it was breathless. Yeah, we're going to need a lot more of this. And in that quiet, golden moment, I realized something. The trip hadn't just changed our weekend. It had changed everything. The line between friend and something more had vanished, leaving only the impossible, thrilling, terrifyingly perfect reality of us. Night fell like a blanket over the cabin, wrapping the world outside in darkness and leaving us alone with the soft crackle of the fireplace. Liam and I sat on the couch, knees brushing, hands occasionally touching in small, tentative ways. The kind of touches that felt almost accidental, but charged with every unspoken word between us. I could feel the heat of him beside me, and every nerve in my body was alert to it. I can't believe we're doing this, Liam whispered, his voice low, almost vulnerable. I mean, us. Here, like this. I looked at him, really looked at him, and my chest tightened. The way the firelight danced across his face, highlighting the curve of his jaw, the soft slope of his lips. It made me dizzy, like I was seeing him for the first time. Neither can I admitted. But I'm glad we are. He shifted closer, and suddenly his hand was resting over mine, fingers curling around them gently. It's kind of insane, isn't it? He said. After all these years, and now this moment. Yeah. I breathed, unable to stop the smile creeping onto my face. Insane, but perfect. And that word seemed to settle everything. Perfect. Not perfect in the sense of flawless, but perfect in the way that mattered. The way that made you want to stay there forever, ignoring everything else. I felt it in my chest, in my stomach, in every fiber of my being. This, whatever this was, felt like it had been waiting all along. I turned slightly, so I could see him better, and our eyes met. The intensity of that gaze was overwhelming, like a tide pulling me under, leaving me helpless to resist. Do you want to? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, my heart hammering. Liam didn't answer immediately. He just leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine. The warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the subtle electricity of proximity. It was almost unbearable. Then, softly, he said, Yeah, I do. That one sentence was enough. I closed the small distance between us, lips finding his in a slow, deliberate kiss that started soft, but grew in urgency. His hands slid around my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. Every brush of his lips, every whisper of contact sent sparks shooting through me. It was gentle and hungry at the same time, a contradiction that made my head spin. When we finally broke apart, just slightly, to catch our breaths, Liam's eyes searched mine, full of wonder and something more, something raw and unguarded. You're incredible, he murmured. I've imagined this 1,000 times, but it's nothing like this. It's real. I felt my chest tighten, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. It's real, I echoed, my voice trembling slightly, and it's just the beginning. For the next few hours, we explored this new territory cautiously, carefully, yet with a reckless hunger that neither of us could fully contain. Hands grazed, lips met, whispers filled the room, sometimes questions, sometimes confessions, sometimes soft, desperate laughter. There was no pressure, just this delicate, intense dance of discovery. At one point, Liam pulled back slightly, resting his forehead against mine again, his fingers tracing idle patterns across my arm. "I don't want to rush," he said softly. "I want to savor this every moment." "I feel the same," I admitted. "I don't want to ruin it, but I also can't stop." He smiled, that same smile that had haunted my dreams for years. "Then, we don't stop. We just take it slow, together." And in that moment, lying against him, feeling the warmth of his body, hearing the quiet crackle of the fire, I realized something profound. This trip, this weekend, had stripped away all pretense. There was no hiding, no pretending, no just friends anymore. There was only us, two people, finally acknowledging the truth that had been there all along. When sleep finally crept over us, it wasn't the usual exhaustion of a long day. It was a peaceful, satisfied, trembling sort of sleep, the kind that comes when your heart is full in a way you didn't think was possible. Liam's hand rested over mine, fingers entwined, and I held on, knowing that the world outside could wait. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. For the first time, I was ready. Morning came quietly. The sun had just started to rise, spilling pale light across the cabin. I woke before Liam, my body still wrapped in the warmth of his. The night had been long, filled with whispered confessions, touches that lingered, and moments that had erased years of hesitation. I could feel him breathing softly against my chest, his hand still holding mine. I didn't move. I just let the moment settle over me, the quiet intimacy of waking beside someone you love, someone you've cared about for years but never allowed yourself to admit it. This was different. This was real, and the thought made my chest swell in a way I couldn't describe. Liam stirred slightly, stretching, and finally opened his eyes. They found mine, and a small, sleepy smile spread across his face. "Morning," he whispered. His voice was husky, filled with that same warmth I had come to crave. "Morning," I replied, letting my fingers brush over his. He shifted closer, resting his forehead against mine, the quiet connection between us grounding me. We didn't speak for a few minutes, just held each other, savoring the calm. There was no rush, no pressure, just the knowledge that this weekend had changed everything. The fear, the anticipation, the uncertainty, it had all led us here, and somehow that made it feel inevitable. Finally, Liam spoke, breaking the comfortable silence. "I don't want this weekend to end," he admitted softly. "I don't want to go back to the city and pretend nothing happened. I want this. Us." I swallowed, my heart pounding. "I feel the same. I don't care about anyone else. Not work, not school, just this, just you." He smiled, a mixture of relief and something tender I couldn't name. "Then we don't have to pretend anymore. Not ever. We'll figure it out together." It was such a simple thing to say, but it felt monumental. Years of unspoken feelings, of stolen glances and fleeting touches had finally found their expression. And now it wasn't just about desire. It was about trust, about knowing that we could take this next step without losing everything else that mattered. We spent the day walking by the lake, talking, laughing, and occasionally letting our hands brush together. Every touch sent a thrill through me, a reminder of the intimacy we had discovered. We swam, splashed, and sat on the dock, legs dangling over the water, the silence between us no longer awkward but comforting. By evening, we were back in the cabin, cooking dinner side by side. Every small touch, the brush of his shoulder, the press of his hand against mine, felt electric. The playful banter was still there, but it was now layered with the knowledge of what had changed. We didn't need to hide our feelings anymore. The weekend had made them undeniable. After dinner, we sat by the fire again, the last night of our trip. Liam leaned into me, resting his head on my shoulder. "I think this is the start of something amazing," he murmured. "It already is," I replied, smiling down at him. "And it's only the beginning." The fire burned low, the night quiet and full of possibility. I felt a deep sense of contentment, of rightness. We had taken a no-pressure trip together, and it had changed everything. Not just our relationship, but the way I saw the world, the way I saw him, the way I saw myself. When we finally went to bed that night, it was with no hesitation, no fear, only trust, only warmth, only the certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. And for the first time in years, I truly believed in the word us. Because sometimes, a weekend can change everything.